Welcome back to the First Paragraph project. Under this project, I'm doing 5 series of videos where I will talk about my understanding as a reader and a book writing coach about first line and first paragraph. We will understand collectively if the opening line and paragraph delivers the promise that it makes to the readers. Last week, I shared my insights about Poor by Katriona or Sullivan, wherein I spoke about the opening line and the opening paragraph. Today, I have picked up the book called Things in Nature Merely Grow by Yiyun Li. So let's dive in. Let me ask you a question. Can a sentence we have heard 100 times still break our hearts? Let me read the first paragraph from this book and then you let me know in the comments what do you think about it. There is no good way to say this. When the police arrive, they inevitably preface the bad news with that sentence as though their presence had not been ominous enough. The first time I heard the line, I knew already what was about to be conveyed. Nevertheless, I paid attention to how the news was delivered. The detective insisted that I take a seat first. I sat down at the dinner table and he moved another chair to the right distance and sat down himself. No doubt he was following protocol, and yet the sentence, there is no good way to say this, struck me as both accurate and effective. It must be a sentence that, though nearly a cliche, is not often used in daily conversation. Its precision has stayed with me. So, my friends, my question to you was, can a sentence we have heard 100 times still break our hearts? What do you think? How do you feel after listening to these few lines? Tell me in comments. As a reader, when I read the first line, I felt fear, a stillness. There was an anticipation. I wanted to know more. And I wondered, what is the bad news? Why the narrator remembers every detail of this moment. So, would I like to keep reading? Absolutely yes. And here is the interesting part. The paragraph doesn't rely on the mystery alone. It relies on predictability. It is telling that something terrible has happened. The narrator knows, the police knows, and I want to know more. So I continued reading and I figured out the news that she had received. And as a mother, for a while, I had to leave the book because I wasn't prepared to read. The tragedy she went through was hard-hitting. I left this book for a while, and then there was a time when I felt like I want to go back to this book. I have read Yiyun Li's The Book of Goose, and that's the reason I picked up this book. But I must say, as a mother, it was one of the hardest books for me to read. Having said that, let's get back to the opening line and opening paragraph. And I want to break it into 5 parts. I want to look at these lines from the perspective of curiosity, voice, character, stake, and the momentum. So let's jump in. The first point that I want to discuss is curiosity. The opening tells us about nothing and almost everything. There is no good way to say this. Immediately we know that something terrible has happened. Someone is about to receive some bad news, but we don't know what happened, who is involved, what event will mean. The paragraph creates what I call is specific uncertainty. We know the category of the event. We don't know its particulars. And the combination is powerful. As a reader and a book writing coach and as an author, there was a lesson in it. What I understood was that readers don't need complete information. They need enough information to ask meaningful questions. And that's the beauty of incredible writing. I am a fan of Yuyan Li and I love reading her. So maybe I could be partial, but I would love to hear your comments and understand what is your take on it. Let's move on to understanding the voice. Listen to this sentence again. The first time I heard the line, I knew already what was about to be conveyed. The voice of the narrator is calm, it is measured, it's almost analytical. Most people would describe this moment emotionally. Instead, the narrator studies body language. Later, she says, I paid attention to how the news was delivered, and that is extraordinary. She's not just living the moment, she's observing it. The voice feels intelligent, it is reflective, and it is disciplined. The lesson that I learned from this was that a distinctive voice often comes from how a narrator pays attention. I want to move on to the next element, which is character. After reading this, the first line and the first paragraph, what do we know about this narrator? Actually, very little. But emotionally, we know a lot. We know that this is the person who notices protocol. She remembers physical details. She thinks about the language. She examines experience even when there is a trauma. One detail says everything. I paid attention to how the news was delivered. Most people would focus on the news. She focuses on the sentence. And that's character. So, the lesson I learned was that character is often revealed through what a narrator notices in moments of stress. Let's understand what is on stake. The stakes are immediate. The police is at the door. The news is bad. The narrator already knows it. She was somehow expecting it. We don't know exactly what happened, but emotionally, the stakes couldn't be higher. And because the narrator is speaking from her observation, from retrospection, we understand that this moment has changed her life. The writing lesson in this is that sometimes the strongest stakes comes from consequence. You don't have to explain the tragedy immediately. You only have to let readers feel its presence. I am moving on to the next element, which is momentum. The momentum is like slow. It is a slow moving paragraph. The detective asks her to sit down. She sits. He moves another chair and he sits down. Nothing happens quickly. The pace imitates the real shock. Time is stretching. Every moment becomes memorable. The slowness creates the tension. So, what I learned in this was sometimes pacing imitates emotional experience. Now, I want to talk about things that worked for me and the things that didn't work for me. Let's first talk about things that worked. For me, there are three things that worked amazingly. It's a marvelous writing. I loved what she has written. The three things that really worked for me, especially in the opening line and opening paragraph, is the opening sentence. There is no good way to say this. It is almost cliche. The narrator even acknowledges that. Yet, cliches often becomes cliches because they hold truth. The sentence works because it is both ordinary and devastating. The second thing that worked for me was the dramatic irony. The narrator already knows. The police knows. The reader knows. But nobody says it. There is so much unsaid about something that is unbearable. The third thing that worked for me was the attention to detail. The detective moving the chair, maintaining the right distance, the protocol. These details make the scene feel painfully real. Let's talk about what didn't work. Some readers may find that the reflective voice is emotionally distant. The narrator is analyzing the language rather than expressing the grief. A reader who is looking for a lot of emotions might feel held at arm's length. But I would argue that this restraint, the distance that the narrator has maintained, that is actually making the paragraph powerful. The calmness is creating room for the reader's emotions. The big lesson in all of this for me as a reader and writer, and I'm sure it will help you, is that the opening demonstrates a profound principle. It tells us that tension does not always come from action. Sometimes tension can come from predictability. The narrator slows the movement down. She studies a sentence. She watches a chair being moved. And in that delay, the reader experiences the stillness, tension, the fear. So, my friends, now I would like to hear from you. What is your take on this? But before you go, I want to share a writing exercise. Write an opening paragraph about receiving difficult news. Your first version could be you state the news immediately, and second version, delay the news and focus only on the moments before it is spoken. And then ask yourself, which version creates more tension? Often, the paragraph that withholds information and pays attention to the small details is the one that readers can't stop reading. So, this is from me. In my next video, the book that I am bringing in is Mother Mary Comes to Me. It's written by Arundhati Roy. You can start reading the book, it's an amazing one, and let's analyze together the first line and the first paragraph. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Keep shining and smiling.